joined on the Crispin Flintoff show by Sarah Wilkinson, who's alive.
I am. I'm a thorn in the Israeli side, I imagine, but I am. And I'm conscious that we mustn't forget that the Palestinians are not in a place where they can be so lucky. So yeah, so I'm just keeping that on the back burner, really, that what we've experienced, which was hideous, horrendous, we have been rescued, which is something, a privilege that is not extended to the Palestinian people. So I'll just put that in first before I talk about myself.
Oh, well, I think it's important that people hear about what happened. I
Yeah,
went to the airport on Sunday evening to welcome you back, and you didn't get through
yeah,
customs or what passport control or whatever it is, immigration.
yeah.
I honestly, that was just unbelievable because I do know vaguely that you had a bad time before that. I mean, especially being captured, being on a flotilla on the seas, and you weren't particularly well before you went off in the first place. I don't know where to start. Or should we just start with why you went on the flotilla? Why did you just
Yeah.
go? I mean, and what was your health like before you went there?
Possibly not brilliant, but I was okay when I touched down in Tunisia. I felt okay. And I felt it was really important that, with our government not doing anything to prevent this hideous genocide, that it's down to people. It's down to people power. And so it was really important that I went. And so I did weigh it up and think, well, you're discharging yourself from hospital. You're not in brilliant good health, but see how you go. And then, so it's in 4 stages, really. The training and the workshops prior to getting on board the boats was intense, extraordinarily intense, too intense, maybe. And then by the time I got on the boat, it was like a whole different chapter, and I felt fine. I felt okay. And then during the course of sailing, we started to run out of water and food supplies. So, we were pretty much starving and dehydrated by the time we were intercepted. So that was the unfortunate side of it, is that I was already in a state of starvation
Can you
when,
tell us a bit about the training? Because I didn't know about that.
well, it's just to make sure that you understand what happens when you're intercepted, how to not escalate, to make sure that, it's got to be a peaceful mission. It's a non-violent mission. The mission is to get to Gaza to deliver humanitarian aid. It's not to rise up in any way. It's to purely, behave as humanitarians would. And so, there was some CPR training and Heimlich maneuvers, things that might happen on a boat, a little bit of sailing training, which wasn't enough, possibly, although I did learn to sail. And just, they're extreme circumstances. You're in a boat, you can't dock on land. You've got to survive with, some boats had 23, 24 people, some boats had 50, mine had 9. And really, you couldn't swing a cat on this boat. It was extraordinarily small for 9 people. And it was mostly male. The crew members, well, there was 2 women and the rest are men. So you've got to learn to cope and exist on board boats with very little sailing training, with a different gender, all packed in the same cabins, all having to share beds with each other. So you've got to be fairly mentally sound to
Yeah.
go, which I thought I was. Maybe there was some criticism that I might not have been mentally sound enough, but I felt that I was, and I handled it fine. I think running out of food and water, that was a difficulty, because we had to make the decision: do we carry on sailing, or do we ask for help and go back, or do we dock somewhere? We had 2 emergency evacuations from the boats, 2 people who, one had a kidney stone and one who psychologically wasn't well. So they had to have emergency rescue. And then, so the crew is changing. They give you another person to help control the sails and, crew the boat, basically. So we did have a couple of disasters. And our autopilot broke. So the crew had to manually sail this ship through very, very choppy waters. That was unbelievable. Every wave you feel, and things were flying off the shelves, and canisters and oil canisters were falling off shelves, and we were getting buried in stuff in the cabins, which was quite dangerous. So there was certain medical training we needed as well, emergency training. So it was important to do that. But nothing can prepare you really for 3 weeks on board a ship with 9 other people. That was a new experience, but learning to sail was a positive. It came out of it. I enjoyed that. It's very hard work. And learning to survive on very little food and water. That was difficult. Learning to share, make sure you didn't, make sure everything was shared into pieces and quarters, and it's just like everything had to be discussed and managed. It was quite difficult, but obviously by the time we could see Gaza,
Gaza, you can see it.
yes, I could see
Oh,
it. And I kept the only thing I could say to people was, I can see Gaza. It was like I got stuck on this. I couldn't take my eyes off it. And obviously it was being bombed at the time. So before sunrise, it was like little lights and little campfires. And then as the sun rose and daylight appeared, then it was a slightly different terrain. So the orange bombing and the explosive and the detonations you could see in the dark, you couldn't see so well in the day. But yeah, I could see Gaza, and it was, do we throw the medical aid overboard? What do we do at this point? We had baby formula and medical supplies, a lot of which wasn't waterproofed, but we were just about to consider throwing it overboard so it could float in on its own. And that's when we got it intercepted. So our focus was taken away from the Israeli boats to look at Gaza. And that's when it all went wrong, really.
but
But
you'd had drone attacks on the way that either your boat or others close to you had been attacked by
yeah,
drones. I mean, was that something that you had in your training as well? Did they expect drone
yeah.
attacks?
Yes,
Oh,
possibly worse. And I mean, the drones were these tiny little, I don't know, round, and they sort of zzz, like a mosquito, but on impact, they just explode. And then there were other drones carrying ropes with the explosive on the bottom of the rope, and which they just dropped onto the boat decks, and that was enough to blow the mast, or I think one mast fell down on one ship, and it was enough to blow a hole. But if these things hit you, it would blow your head off. So when we saw this drone trying to find an impact surface, the idea is not to stand up, because if anything it bumps into, it just immediately detonates. So we all had to hit the deck, and this thing literally passed through the ship. We had the sails put down, but the boat next to us had one sail up, and that was the impact. So the boat next to us lost its sail, but that then set on fire, and it's sort of got a plastic or a polymer in the sail, so that dripped, and so loads of holes below the point of impact as well. And that sail was out. Then I think they had to engine their way the rest of the way, because their sail was out of action. But on one ship, the whole mast was brought down, and that put the whole boat out of action. So the fear of the drones meant that you couldn't sleep, because you all had to be on night watch on a sort of rotating shift. But you never really slept when it wasn't your shift, or you slept very lightly. So we were sleep deprived as well by the time we were intercepted, because every night was a drone watch night. And it was, a malicious attack. We were in international waters. We were not far from Sicily, I believe, when the drone attack happened. So we sailed further into Greek waters for protection, and near a nature reserve, because it's very precious to Crete, this nature reserve. So we did feel they won't attack this nature reserve. Crete, that would be like World War III. So we were safe there, but as soon as we sailed out of that 12-mile stretch, then the drones were back on us again and following the ship. So there were moments of terror. You couldn't rest because one way or another, the Israelis were coming. And so, yeah, I had about an hour's sleep, maybe, per night.
What?
Um,
1 hour sleep a night?
yeah, for about a week or 9 days, I think. Yeah.
How good are you at that normally?
I don't think I've ever gone without sleep. There's a slight manicness of when you don't sleep. Instead of being tired, what happens is you get a little bit manic. But the fear factor of the drones, you have to remain silent. Don't make too much noise, and you've got your sails down so that there's a small chance that it can hit the mast, but then they must be quite difficult to steer, these little things. And they do dodge about. Plus, we're moving. We were sailing 24/7. We don't stop. So the crew are having to sail the ship through the night. So these drones actually would find it hard to hit the mast. They did on one ship, but on ours they missed it and went straight past. So, but that's not going to happen the next night. Every night there's a possibility, wherever you are in the seas, whether you're in Greek waters or Tunisian waters or Italy's waters, they're going to attack anyway. The Israelis have this impunity, don't they? So it doesn't really matter whose seas you're in, they're still going to attack you. So yeah, the drone watch was kind of important. That was a matter of life and death, really.
And then, so you saw Gaza, and you would, you could actually, I can't believe you could see
Yeah,
the bombing of Gaza as well,
yeah,
and then see the people, what fires that they were lit up for people
yeah,
just to keep warm or whatever.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then you had the Israelis approaching you in a boat. What happened at that point? Did they give you
Yeah.
a warning? Did they what was that? What was that?
Well, they missed us quite a few times. They got a spotlight and they were trying to sink ships with seawater on one side from one boat. And then they had another boat on the other side, which was skunk water, which we certainly didn't want to get sprayed in because you can't wash. Everything has to be washed in seawater. And we're en route to Gaza at this point. You cannot stop. You can't slow the ship down. You've got to keep going. So to getting sprayed in skunk water would have meant that we would have smelt for the whole period of time that after we were intercepted. So we covered the boat with there was we got a plastic cover for the door and then a cover for the decks, so that if they sprayed seawater, it would bounce off because they can sink the ship by filling the boat full of seawater. So we evaded them. And then the ships with the like motorboats with the spotlight, they seemed not to be able to find us. We kept evading, excuse me, they kept evading the lights while it was dark. But of course, once it was daylight, I think we were then in front of all of the other boats. So we just kept sailing, thinking, oh, well, they're intercepting other boats here. We could get through. Let's keep sailing. And then they came from the back and just literally attached themselves to the boat and boarded it. And then we were all put downstairs in the cabin, in the kitchen area, in the cabins, and we weren't allowed to go on board deck. So we were allowed to move around. We were allowed to use the toilet, but we weren't allowed to go up on deck. And we all had to squash in together, which was difficult because it's a small boat. So 9 people sat on top of each other, literally, for about 7 hours.
Wow.
It's a long time, and it was very hot. There was no way of cooling down. So we were pretty emaciated, hot, starving, hungry, and thirsty by the time we reached the harbour. And the Israelis had taken complete control of the boat. They couldn't sail. They had a go at sailing, but they couldn't sail. The sail was flapping around everywhere, but they used the engines at full power. And it still took 7 hours to
And that
reach.
was to Ashdod
Yeah,
port, was it?
yeah, yeah.
And
Which
what happened? So you were all together till you got to the port, and then what happened?
they made us sit in contorted positions, or they made other people you have to stare at the floor, and then they made some people kneel, and some people kneel with their face on the floor, and some people kneel with their head on the floor.
Was
They
this
were
all with guns to your head, or?
Yeah, they've all got guns. Some
Did they take them
Israelis.
out and did they sort of show them to you and like
Yeah,
the
yeah, no, the guns were quite prevalent, I would say. And I don't think anybody dared not sit in one position for 2 hours, because a lot of these conscripts probably were itching to fire their weapons, and there is that feeling that they will shoot you. There's no doubt that they wouldn't shoot anybody who tried to stand up or disobeyed orders. So they did leave me alone. I kept looking at the ground, and I was actually just coincidentally in the shade. I think I was one of the only ones where I got a tiny bit of shade from the roof of the neighboring building. Everybody else is in the scorching heat, and the crew members were assaulted. I think Surya, my colleague, his shoulders dislocated. He's got some quite serious injuries, and I haven't seen whether or not the other crew members came out unscathed or not. I've lost contact, not having a phone. But then they took me in quite early, and I was strip searched, which was
What do you
quite
mean they took you in? So they took you out of the boat and then
yeah.
they they separated you from everyone else.
Well, we were all sat in rows, all of us, some kneeling, some in strange positions. But I was one of the first to be lifted off the floor and taken into the port. So it depends how much they wanted you to suffer. And I think they were quite keen to get me in to go through all my bags and stuff. And like I say, strip search me twice. I think I was strip searched twice that time, and assaulted during the strip search, humiliated, sort of
What do you mean?
various.
I'm sorry, I have to ask you, what do you mean by assaulted?
Well, they assaulted me during the internal strip search. I'll have to, like, if I can talk around it, I was assaulted during the strip search. And I don't know, mentally, I seemed to handle it okay because I knew that others were going to go through the same. But having spoken to many people while we were in Negev prison, I don't know whether everybody had to go through the same sort of strip search. But for me, it was a full strip search. So, and it was painful. You know, it was.
Oh dear.
So I need some sort of psychological support maybe, but at the moment I can't kind of grab the trauma, but I'm aware that I possibly, there is some trauma. I just can't grab it at the moment. But then there's a whole process of interrogation. Then I demanded a lawyer, and I did get a really good lawyer from Adala. But some people didn't realize that they could persist. They asked for a lawyer, didn't get one, and then they carried on without one. But I just kept saying I refused to answer any questions without a lawyer. And they allocated me one and she was very, very good. And she just said, here's the form, sign it. That's the form you sign. Don't sign these other ones, sign this one, and we'll get you home as soon as possible. But then you carry on through the system, then you're made to sit in rows, and then then you have to wait, and then you're put on a bus. And we were held on the bus for absolutely hours in extreme temperatures. They turned the heating on, no water, no toilet facilities. You're not allowed off the bus, in the dark, pitch black. And it was like an episode out of, I don't know, Tenko, was it the World War II? So I was greeted by all these women, Spanish speaking women on the bus. And it was like, I don't know, some sort of bonding moment of like World War II. It was the kind of like the wives of the resistance fighters or something. And they were sort of humming Bella Ciao and trying to keep our spirits up. But we had no water, no toilet for 5 hours, maybe longer. And we couldn't breathe in this tiny little blacked out vehicle, all metal. We couldn't sit in the end. There were so many of us in there. So we had to sit on the floor, try and find a space somewhere in the dark. And then we were driven to a compound in Negev prison and put in like an animal pen. I can't actually describe it any more than it was like a sheep pen. So it's caged all the way around, caged over the roof. And we were strip searched again, and then we were given prison clothes and put in another pen. And then Itamar Ben Gvir arrives doing a press release. to kind of put his cameras on these people that he's now caged in these animal pens. And we thought, right, we're not going to let his press release go swimmingly. We're going to start saying we've got no water, we've got no food, we're starving, we're too hot, we've got, and so we started complaining. And so he moved to the next pen, which was ours, and he's right in front of me. And I couldn't think what to say to him apart from, you are a lot shorter than I realized. And that probably was my downfall, maybe, this bit of communication I had with him, because they kept us awake in the cells. Oh, they wouldn't let us sleep, shining torches in our eyes and slamming doors, pulling us out for like, a cell, pulling our cell apart. They got dogs, a line of dogs outside. So they kept moving us from cell to cell, changing the people we were with, and no food, still no water. Yeah, it was hideous. And then I heard that one woman was ill in the cell next door. She'd got some sort of dehydration sickness, but I didn't realize I'd got it. So I was thinking, I've got to get water to this woman next door. I don't know how we're going to do it. And then I went to sleep and they woke me up after about a quarter of an hour and I couldn't stand up. And they dragged me out and I honestly, I couldn't stand. I couldn't walk. I didn't realize that I was so dehydrated that my body had just stopped functioning. So yeah, they took us. I can't remember where they took us. My brain's fogged out from that. But we were made to stand against a wall. It would look like an execution wall. And then I couldn't stand. I kept falling over. And one of the Malaysian activists, God bless her, kept picking me up and holding me up. And they kept separating us, so I fell down again. But it was like an execution. And then they brought the men out to watch. And then they made us face the wall. And so we were there for about an hour with guns pointed at us, thinking, right, we're going to die now. This is an execution. So the trauma of that, you see, I just can't get hold of that either. And then they basically dragged us back into the cells again. And then the whole thing would start all over again. But we stole some bread from the guards. There was like a bin of food and it was just this hard, stale bread. But we stole as many sheets of this bread each as we could. And they didn't take it off us when they saw that we had bread. So I was able to give everyone in my cell a piece of bread, but it was riddled with insects. I had to eat it anyway. Still no water. And the only other thing was the tap water in this one sink, which was brown. And it ran clear after maybe a day. We kept running it so that the brown ran off. And then we had to drink that. So, yeah, I think the reason why I'm not very well is because of that water. Whether it's, I mean, they tested us for radioactive shoes on the way out. So I'm guessing it's being the area is quite known for being radioactive, then possibly the water was contaminated as well, which is why we're not well on return.
So when did you hear that you might be able to leave?
We didn't. That was the thing. We didn't know why we were in this bus. We were hoping it was about deportation. They moved us into another cell. Well, they moved us every sort of quarter of an hour between cells. I don't think that night from about sundown, because I didn't know what time it was, till about maybe 1:30, 2 in the morning, I was constantly moved from cell to cell. And then I'm finally in this last cell and I'm thinking, you've all signed the form, immediate release form. So maybe we're being deported and we're going home, but we didn't know. And then we're put on this bus and they turned the heat up and then they made it really cold. So it was a good long 3-hour journey, maybe longer, in this tiny little bus. And we scratched the black paint off with an old bottle top. And I could see Palestine outside the the bus, and it's weird little joys. The joy of seeing Palestine, despite what was going to happen or where we were going, just being able to see Palestine, because we traveled from south to north. We could see everything really, and that kept us going. So we ended up in Ramon, outside Ramon jail, and I thought, oh my God, we're now being put in Ramon jail, which is also notorious. But they drove in and round and out again. It was just a psychological,
Wow.
yeah, just sort of cruelty, really. And then the next thing was Eilat and the Turkish aeroplane. But we didn't know entirely that we were being deported. No, nothing was said. Just shouting, go, sit, move, passports, sit, move, go. And then they handed me a clean top because I'd had a nosebleed. I'd got blood on my. I had to use my sleeve. There's no such thing as tissues, and so I'd use my sleeve. And they didn't like the fact that I was going into the airport with marks on my sleeve or blood stains on my sleeve. So they made me wear a clean top to make it look good. So I did that. You just basically, if you think you're being deported, you obey everything they ask you to do. Get out, get in, step down, stand here, move there. You just do what you're told because they're armed, and I'm very easily a target. So we were sort of marched through the airport and straight on board the flight to a rapturous cheer when we got in the aeroplane.
You were, how many people were on the plane with you?
Think 120-ish. And we were fine. That Turkey was amazing. I mean, they fed us an enormous meal. So it was copious amounts of fizzy juice or whatever you wanted to drink, tea, food, pudding, a lovely meal. And then as we were coming to touchdown, several of us started being ill. So I was ill just as we hit the runway in Turkey, and then another woman opposite me, she passed out. So it's like the food shock, maybe, because that boy did I eat. And yeah, unfortunately my body couldn't hang on to it, and I was really ill. So of course ambulances turned up to take us from the plane straight to the hospital. I think it's just the relief. Once we'd hit Turkey, we knew we were safe. And then it's like your body no longer needs to hold on to you any longer. So it just, you kind of relax a little bit, and that's it. I became ill, but I didn't want to get in the ambulance because there's an enormous welcome party, and all the Turkish people turned up, the government officials, police, everybody basically to help us. And I didn't want to just disappear in an ambulance. So I tried really hard to receive my bunch of flowers. And I did an interview, which I don't remember. I don't even recall doing the interview. But I've seen it and actually thought it was CGI. I didn't think it was real. I didn't do an interview, but I did start feeling sick and I passed out. So I had to eventually go in an ambulance to the hospital.
Wow.
So, which was full of us, which was full. The A&E department there was full of people being rehydrated on drips, um, and they were brilliant, the doctors. They basically, you didn't have to explain why you were in such a poor state. Like in England, I've now got to explain to the doctor why I'm not well, and it's a fantastical story that nobody's going to ever believe in a million years, not in this town that I live in. But in Turkey, you didn't need to explain why you were vomiting, why you couldn't hold in any food, why you were dehydrated. I'm so dizzy, I can't walk. I still can't walk now. But I didn't have to explain any of that. So now I'm in a position where I've got to explain to the GP, why can't I walk? And it's difficult because they're not in flotilla brain mode at all. They're in, English countryside GP who've never heard a tale like this before.
So you had a glimpse of Gaza, which gave you some hope and spirit, and then they invaded the ship. So
Yeah.
you get these little glimpses of to keep you going, and you saw Palestine in the bus. then you get to Turkey, you have good treatment, you're cared for. It seems like everything's going okay, and then you scheduled a flight to come to Heathrow. So
Yes.
you must have been thinking this is it. I mean, oh thank God I've got through all that.
Yeah, I did.
Can you tell us? Can you tell us what happened then?
Well, the thing is, I had to discharge myself from Turkish hospital because they wanted to keep me for 2 weeks. They probably wanted to treat people for longer than a day. So I had to go through mental gymnastics to get out of hospital because in Turkey they have this rule: if you're not cured, you don't leave. And I wasn't right, but I felt, look, I've got to go home. I've got a bail to surrender to. So I'm going to discharge myself. But so I gave up the right to treatment, really. And that's possibly what I needed. So on the plane home, we were allowed to sort of choose which flight we wanted. The Turkish government covered everything, including meeting us at the airport, treating us, I guess, like heroes. I'm so I use that word carefully, but they straight on the plane, bypassed all passport control, everything. We're on the plane. Food comes along. We're talking about the possibility of being arrested on the aeroplane, a bit like Richie Medhurst, which didn't happen. So we disembarked in good spirits. It's difficult to explain, really. I suppose I didn't know how I was going to get home, but I was alive and I was on home turf. And then my colleagues went through first, and my passport wouldn't go through the machine, the automated passport
All
thing.
right.
So I was picked up by a border guard who then took my passport away, and then with about 5 minutes, all these plainclothes police turned up, and it was quite an aggressive arrest from someone who's just been treated so well by Turkey. I'm still in prison clothes, and I've still got all of the gifts and things that Turkey gave me, and there I am having everything snatched off me. I'm manhandled. I'm searched in the airport in front of people. I'm put in this immigration area where I gave a speech to everyone trying to get into the country. Why do you want to get into Britain? It's an awful place. I'm a British citizen and I'm being arrested for returning home. And then I was in a back of a police van, and then I was transferred to a car, and they drove me all the way to Monkmoor Police Station in Shrewsbury. And then Shrewsbury said, well, we knew we're all right about you missing your bail date. We were fine, we were okay. We're not going to remand you, but you are being charged on 5 counts of terrorism. So that's the response I got from Britain. And if you compare that to Turkey, or compare it even to the Israeli regime, it's like who's working with who here. They knew which flight I was on. So they'd been waiting. There was a flight I was meant to get, and then we didn't come on it. The government changed us to a later flight. So the police had been waiting there from the earlier flight onwards at the airport, ready to arrest me. So they were waiting for me. It's like hound dogs, isn't it, really? So, and it was an aggressive arrest. It was handcuffed around, my back. The handcuffs were too tight, and sort of thrown in this police van like some criminal. And it's really difficult to I don't know, get your head mentally around it, is that Britain treats you with utter disdain and Turkey treats you beautifully and medicates you and provides you with everything you need. So
So
it was like,
they didn't tell you where you were going when they put you in the van.
no, but when I got in the car, they said, we're driving you to your local police station. It's not
So it
really
wasn't
local.
that dissimilar to Israel where they didn't tell you
No,
where you were going.
there was a lot of similarities about it. And it was like I was back in that. So I come out of that emergency situation where we were being, I guess, it is torture. What the Israelis are doing is it's all forms of tactics of psychological torture and heat and dehydration and starvation torture. And contorted positions and sleep deprivation, and then you're in a British police van treating you much the same, not telling you where you're going. I'm in literally a cell in the van, which was literally the shape of me. I mean, I couldn't move my knees. was a tiny little space, and you couldn't see out. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities. But I was charged, and then they had to drive me home because I had no phone, no passport, no money, no bank cards. Everything's been taken off us, or it's ended up in the Mediterranean Sea. So I've no way of getting home, no way of making a single phone call. And it was like 2:30 in the morning by this time. So he said, "Oh, I can't ring your solicitors at this time, so you've got no legal representation." So I just had to go with what the police said, and then they drove me home. And then they disappeared. They didn't even walk me to my door. They literally just let me out the car door, and I had to manage to walk up the road to the house. So yeah, it was, yeah, comparably, it was just an enormous similarity, really, apart from the torture. So yeah, so I went from okay to not okay again very quickly. And then I haven't been very well since. So
And your state of mind, you don't sound like you're traumatized, but you may well be beyond traumatized in some way. You
yeah,
can't even process it. You're talking about stuff that's horrific without making
yeah,
any kind of
um,
emotional
yeah.
connection to it.
No, there's no connection. I'm totally separated, like it was a sort of dream state. And I'm aware that I think the fear of dying, well, waiting to be shot 4 or 5 times over, like the sort of execution wall thing, I think was one of the most hideous. And then resigning yourself to God, just shoot me. Just shoot me. This is just, don't prolong it. Just get on with it. Resigning yourself. And then the women around me singing Bella Ciao because they thought I think they were going to be killed too. Um, yeah, that will stay in my head, but I can't find the fear anymore. I can't find it. It's kind of gone. And I'm not physically well. Like my organs aren't functioning. My liver and my kidneys are painful. I have an infection, um, which I've got to get sorted from the strip search. So if I don't have, yeah, I have some sort of infection, and I feel like I've got hepatitis. In all honesty, having had hepatitis before, I don't know whether I have, and I could be just sort of trying to put two and two together, and I'm coming up with five, but I feel like my organs aren't functioning properly. I haven't got ground legs. I'm dizzy. I'm still being sick, and I'm nauseous the whole time, and I'm struggling to eat, and I can't drink water. Do you know what? The taste of water, I've got a fear, I think, of water at the moment. The taste of it just throws me straight back into the desire for it in Israeli custody. I couldn't drink water there either unless it was brown and fecal. And now the taste of water, I can't drink it. So I'm having to try and drink fizzy pop or something with a strong taste to it, which is probably not agreeing with me either. So I'm not in a place where I feel I'm recovered, and I'm not sure why I'm not recovering, but I'm not. So yeah, hospital appointments and doctor's appointments are ahead of me, but something isn't right. But I
I
don't
mean,
know what.
what's your condition with the police at the moment? What can you do, or if your bail conditions been made worse?
Oh, yes, I'm under house arrest, but I'm allowed, they've lessened first of all, it was just house arrest until the 20th of October, where there's the first hearing at Westminster Court in London. So until the 20th, I'm under this house arrest. But then he lessened the arrest because I had made an attempt to hand myself in and get back in time for my bail. And because of that, he said, "I'll tell you what, I'll allow you to be out between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. So I can actually go out of the house between those hours, but outside of 7 p.m. I've got to be indoors. So yes, I don't think I'm going to be going anywhere, probably between 7 and 7. I'm quite happy to be here. But yeah, it's quite restrictive. But it's maybe because I left the country, despite the bail date was the 8th of October. which they brought forward while I was in the Mediterranean, you see, but I had no knowledge of that. So I was still planning
Do
on
you
going.
think they knew you were out of the country when they brought this forward?
Yeah, I think if you look at my Twitter account and then you see I was trying to do not a daily vlog. I was trying to do a vlog when I could get my phone charged and something had happened or there was something to say. So I'm imagining if they're monitoring my account, they would have seen I was in the middle of the Mediterranean, miles away from land, bobbing around in a boat, sailing. And so bringing my bail date forward to a date I couldn't possibly make unless I swam to shore, about 200 miles. We didn't dock anywhere, because of the visa control things. You can't just dock in Sicily or dock in Crete and get off. You've got to have a visa. You've got to go through passport control. So we didn't dock anywhere. We went into a bay for respite, but not to dock.
You've got a court case in London on the 20th of October.
Yes, for five counts.
And what's that terrorism charges?
Yeah, they're ridiculous. I'm being charged for distributing terrorist material. Now, no, a terrorist publication. Now, what publication is that? If I'm distributing by leaflet, I'm too lazy to do that. I'm not somebody who goes out leafleting. So distributing terrorist publications. Now that implies a magazine or a news outlet has been declared as a terrorist outlet without anybody's knowledge or without my knowledge. What terrorist publication am I distributing? So that is a really strange one. What evidence they have on that is actually beyond me. And if it's hand to door distribution, I'm too lazy for that. It's never happened and never will. And then inciting other people in my own house as well. It's in my house to support a prescribed organization. But that again, what evidence do you have on that? Because I don't often have visitors anyway. So why would I incite other people to support a prescribed organization? That is a really strange charge.
Which one is that? Did they say is that no?
They haven't told me anything as far as evidence, and it's possible looking at I can't remember, so I've forgotten his name now. Went to court and all the evidence is secret. It's possible they might do that. I don't know what the evidence is, and so all of these, and then there's one not giving them my PIN number, which when they served the Reaper disclosure, there was no way I could give my PIN number because it automatically changes every morning, and I didn't have it on me, and neither they'd taken my devices, so there's no way I could have given them passcode, and I explained all that, but they're charging me for that as well. But that's out of my hands. I had a little electronic device that changes your PIN code every morning.
Wow.
And then you just write it down and off you go. But it changes automatically. So by the time I came out of prison, or out of custody, I should say, it had changed 3 times. There's no way it would be the same. So I couldn't even get my own devices myself. I mean, that they'd taken most of them. So the PIN codes no longer are applicable once they change. So you can't go back. So there was and I explained all this, and they accepted that, and they went, okay, fine, fair enough. We'll get into your phones and your devices without the PIN code. They clearly haven't. So so they're now charging me for not being able to access my phone, which is their problem, really, not mine. So that's the 5th charge, and the others I just do not know what evidence. If it's tweeting, then are you saying that X is a terrorist publication? If it's Electronic Intifada or Middle East Monitor, are you saying one of these news outlets that I use to spread the news, if you like, is a terrorist publication? Because I am not aware of it. Is anybody aware of it? And I tend to use the same news gatherers or journalists or outlets pretty much most of the time. I'm not aware that they've been classified as terrorist news outlets. So it's bonkers. And you know, I guess it can be fought in court with ease, but at the same time, that court case might not be for another 4 years. So do I get my passport back? Am I under house arrest and for 4 years? These things I don't know. They're an unknown quantity. But they are ridiculous charges, and it's just more British state repression, and you know, and also just targeting journalists and targeting activists, purely because they support Palestine. And you know, the flotilla, which was labelled by Ben Gvir as a terrorist flotilla, you know, is me being on the flotilla also going to be added to those charges? Possibly, yeah, because the British government did not support it and didn't support it. So I don't know. It's an unknown quantity. So I've got to get myself fit and healthy first, and then I'm okay in court. Take me to court. Let's see what this evidence is, if I ever get to find out.
Wow.
Mm.
What an incredible few weeks you've had.
Yeah,
And it wasn't much more than a year ago that your house was raided. It was about
yeah,
a year ago, wasn't it? A bit
yeah.
more
It's
than
just
a year.
over a year. So they've been deferring the bail pretty much every month that my bail date came up. Then they deferred it again to the following month, and again and again. And this is the first time they brought it forward. Sorry,
But you know, what they did come into your home was horrific, and probably the biggest, most watched video that I've ever put out was the
yeah.
interview of you then.
Well, they could raid
Now
again.
you've been through that, and you're still
Mm.
going.
Yeah,
I mean, what an incredible person you are to have survived. Uh, I mean, the psychological torture that they're putting you through, the physical, um, I mean, yeah, torture again.
well, my
A
health
sexual
is
assault in Israel. I mean,
yeah. I don't know
uh,
what to term that as. And there's some blockage about me being able to say it is a sexual assault, but I'm struggling with adding that word on in the beginning. And I mean, I was certainly assaulted, but I'm having problems with actually labeling it for what it was. I don't know why. Maybe just exhaustion at the moment. But the reason I'm still going, Crispin, is because the genocide has not is still happening. You know, the Palestinians every single day. They've now declared that 92 people per day are, on average, are being murdered by the Israeli regime. That's why I'm still here. And the thing is, I'm going to have to remain here. I'm going to have to fight this court case, and I'm going to have to remain able to keep spreading the news, no matter what happens to me, no matter how ill I get. I'm going to have to keep doing it, because it's still, in comparison to what the Palestinians are going through, it's nothing. It's just a bit of side salad. They don't have the privilege of escaping all of this horror, and so it's up to us to do whatever we can. And if there's another flotilla, then I'll have to go on that. And if there's another, I don't know, a land march, or maybe I'll do that. But we have to keep going, all of us. No matter what's thrown at us, we've got to keep going, because we're on the right side of history. So that's got to count for something in the long run.
yeah.
But
I mean,
yeah.
the other thing that I think on this is you know you represent. I mean, you're in Shropshire. You're from the Midlands. You are Middle England, really. Literally.
Yeah.
Um, the fact that you've had this happen to you, it must open people's eyes to what Israel's like. I mean, you
Yeah, I
had
want it
ideas that
to.
Israel was going to treat you badly when you got intercepted, as they call it. Was it as bad as you anticipated? I mean, if you had to, what was
Um,
your assessment of Israel, the way they treat people?
I didn't think I was going to survive. So I'm trying to think what I was thinking, what the level of fear was. And I don't know whether we could find the fear, but I think the fact that we couldn't find it meant that we all thought that it's possible that we're not going to survive. So we went in it thinking this could be the end. This is the last thing I do. This is the last broadcast I make. Maybe this is the last meal I eat. This is the last time I hug somebody. There was that feeling at the back of my mind. And then when they found me on the Mossad list during the interrogation, all I could hear amongst the Hebrew was my name and Mossad and them nodding. And I thought, well, that's it now. That's the end of me. But there was a lot of phrases, that's the end of me, a lot of times, and it just never happened. So there's that psychological torture of no thinking this is the end of me. But imagine the Palestinians probably think this every morning. And the whole point of the flotilla was to deliver them aid. So we were tortured because we were delivering baby formula. And I think that's when you boil it down to basics. We were tortured for delivering food, medicine, and baby milk. And I don't know any persons on this planet that could justify that, really. And being Palestinian, they are being killed simply for being Palestinian. Can we ever justify that either? No. Arrested at Heathrow simply for supporting Palestine. All of these things that none of what's happening to activists and journalists and everybody who supports Gaza can actually find a way for the authorities to justify their actions. And this is just another one.
I mean, just another one. Just I know you've got to go. I wanted to go and do it, but this idea that you're on the Mossad list? Do you think that's why you've been targeted by British police?
Probably. They are working in line. I mean, the Israelis are allies of this. I mean, just imagine having an ally that incarcerates the likes of Nkosi Mandela, for example, and you know, doctors and medics and nurses and students and teachers and all of these ordinary folk. Imagine an entity doing that to people, and then you proudly claim that you're their ally. I'm deeply ashamed of our government, and I'm imagining the government is deeply ashamed, but it's covering up. You don't make friends out of people who kill other people, murderers and torturers and people prepared to assault and kill children, babies, and actually target pregnant women. I mean, all of this. You don't make allies out of that type of person. And the Israelis are monsters. And I had this phrase when I was coming out, I'm going to tell God everything, which is the phrase I stuck with. Make sure you survive so you can tell God everything. But actually, it's a metaphor for I'm going to tell the world how monstrous the Israelis are, how brutal they are. They couldn't even get along with each other. They were pushing each other around, and they are vile. They are utter monsters. There is nothing human about someone who's prepared to humiliate you while you're naked, or rifle butt you, or you know, point guns at you, or threaten to shoot you, or make you stand in line for an execution and then not execute you. There's nothing human about that. They're not allies of anyone. And if you say they're your friends, you know, you're deluded, and you're also quite dangerous yourself. And that is what the British government's doing. It's saying, oh no, they're our allies. No, they're not. There's no human values at all. They have absolutely no values of compassion or anything anywhere in their bones. And yeah, so the phrase "I'll tell God everything" that's kind of what's kept me going. There's an importance. People need to know these are not allies. These are people who will kill you just for criticizing them. And we got a taste of that. And I don't know how the Palestinians have endured it for 77 years or whatever it is. I don't know how they've come through. The strength and the resilience of the Palestinian people is just, you know, you can't surpass that at all. I don't know how they've survived it for so long.